Session 5, Rift of Nations. Here we go. This session was insane. Some bombs were dropped. This was the day before Labor Day or whatever, so we had a little bit of a longer session. Some crazy things went down as far as lore bombs go. There's a nat 20. I think it was the only nat 20 of the session at the exact moment of this crossroads where I had the moment as a dungeon master of, do we go down this road this early? Is this something, should I? And I had all these questions, but do I release all these secrets soon enough? And like these secrets that I have as a dungeon master, I want to keep close to the chest. It's too early. They can't know. But like the dice were telling a story. They were making choices. And I'll get into the big picture of how crazy it is here in a second. So let's dive right into it. This whole thing started off with a scarecrow fight. I have those the full mechanics right here in the good old mechanics sheet. If you want to kind of see that, I don't know if you're going to be able to. Okay, cool. That's solid. This is behind the scenes right there of what I have. You can pause it or whatever. But basically what happened is they have apex actions at the start of round 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on that happen at the top of the round. There's a terrifying presence. I asked the players before the session, what's your biggest fear? What's your biggest fear? Ivar's biggest fear, the fighter, is this like sickness that has affected his family and his oldest brother's like coughing up this black stuff, and now he starts coughing up the black stuff at the beginning from this save at the beginning, which is basically fear. But I wanted to give the fear instead of just like, you're afraid. No, I wanted to give a specific, like, why you're afraid. You're coughing up all this stuff. One of the other players is afraid of heights, so he starts floating. He starts floating up into the sky. Nobody else sees him floating. He feels himself floating up in the air and sees like, oh. And so his fear was that as a manifestation of these weird mechanics that was happening. So I literally got little flight risers out and like put his character high in the air. And as for movement purposes, he moved normally. But he's like, wouldn't I be moving less because I'm moving diagonally up? I'm like, no, you move normally, which I didn't want to give him the full behind the scenes mechanics. I'm like, no, this is how you're moving, because he literally was just moving forward, but he just thought he was flying. Oh my god. And then one of the other players' fears, the artificer Clara, was fire, and I had all those different little tokens out on the battlefield. Here's a little picture of the battlefield, right? All of those things are 2D terrain from Dungeon Craft. Those, if you flip them over, they have the fire on the backside. So yeah, it's a barrel, but if you flip it over, it's a barrel on fire. So those are cool little things there. So Claire's afraid of fire, and then Q, the barbarian, was afraid of water. Like the whole ground started, like the water that was around them. They're on this island. This is very important. There's like a little peninsula they were on. So there's the building that they started off at the bottom of the map, and then there's water surrounding everything, right? And the whole mechanic of this fight was fear and overcoming it and stuff, and these scarecrows tapping into their nightmares. It was a scarecrow fight. And the whole mechanic was each scarecrow, as part of their turn, could target one person and do a wisdom saving throw on them to move 15 feet further away. And the whole time, I'm trying to shove them into the water. The whole time. And they figured it out once I made this big moment when I finally said, like, all right, here we go. You're 15 feet away from the water. This is a big save. I made them roll in the box in the Tower of Doom. It's this dice tower that they roll into for big moments. And they're like, oh, shoot, okay. And they like, no. And it helps me build tension too. They know if I ask you to roll in the dice tower, like, this is a big roll. So rolled and succeeded. He was fine. Q did not get pushed into but then now they all kind of realized, okay, we got to get in here. And then there was a layer action, an apex action of outwards, like they just ran outwards from the center of the main scarecrow, moving outwards. So they had to keep managing, and at one point they figured out to kind of like grab each other and like help stop moving each other to keep this from happening. But I finally got them from some interesting tactics of me trying to do whatever I can to get them into the water. Clara helped Ivar, the artificer helped the fighter to stop him from getting into the water, and then she became the target, and she was the only one that was within 15 feet. So I targeted her and shoved her back into the water, and Q at the same time failed one of his things, the barbarian, back into the water. And so they had to make a wisdom saving throw again for this whole this rot water to affect them. And if you've been watching these videos, the rot is this very, very bad disease that is spreading, and they got affected by it. So now both of them have the rot, the early stages of the rot. So that's really interesting. We'll see how that goes. But that was one of the biggest things I wanted to accomplish. I wanted to give them something with this fight that they had. I was trying to get rot on them. I wasn't trying to damage them. Like, obviously they're getting deal damage, and if the fight goes poorly, sure, that's always on the table. But like, I wanted to have a different goal. Like, can they get through this fight without getting rot? And 2 of the 4 players got rot. So that's really interesting, and it gives me some more kind of connection to the world and the lore of this whole rot thing going on. It's a problem now for them that I'll keep being able to dial up. So fight. Clara, the artificer, went to town with her new returning weapon. She has this buzzsaw weapon where she like this little circle with these blades come out, and she can throw it and then catch it and returns back to her. She absolutely killed it. Darius figured out how to like once they successfully were able to figure out a way to do something successful to address their fear, it shook off and they wore off with them, right? So the wizard got some vines and pulled himself back to the ground, and then he snapped out of it. But then what it looks like to everybody else is he just pulled vines out of the earth and grabbed on his own ankles as he's standing on the ground. So there's interesting moments there with what they were seeing themselves and experiencing in their own heads and what actually happened in the battlefield. So Scarecrow fight went off, and they were able to settle everything down to now go back into the flash forward here through the rest of the session. First big combat, 2 players got rot. Interesting. The NPCs that were kind of like in danger as well they were able to save them and kind of talk to them, and they found out that the 2 NPCs that were the innkeepers were Petra's parents. Petra is the love interest of one of the players. Darius, the wizard. Let me know if I should say their names or their classes, who I should refer to them by. I feel like I should say their names because that makes it more personal, but then sometimes I forget what the class was. So anyway, as we go through this, I'll probably just do both and then eventually just do the names. So this is where they're at. I made a little map. This is the map of the world, by the way. Oh my God, the map of the world. Here you go. We got the Grasslands Nation, Tech Nation, Forest Nation, Mountain. This is a beta version of the map. You'll see why here in a second. And this is where they currently were. This was the outpost that they were at a few days ago, where they saw the outpost group, the southern outpost group that had been sent here, and then they went here. This is where they saw Randapand, this like furbolg person that was all beaten up with lycanthropy, which you'll see that happens there in a second. They came to Greenhaven, got to Greenhaven, figured out all these problems going on. This is the outpost tower that they were also had a quest to go to, and this is Q's grandmother's house that they need to also go to. So they're here now, and they're like, okay. After the dust settles with all the Scarecrow stuff, they looked around trying to investigate some things, and then decided finally to go, all right, we're going to go into the forest. They're going to go into the forest, and they decided to go into the forest. Let me go down here in my forest section. Oh, they did talk about the apex creatures, which are, these are the apex creatures. We have a Vrock, which is, they call a demon bird. There's a Periton, which is these weird, creepy creatures in the forest. Look at this thing, crazy creature in the forest. And then we got a Dwemer cat, and these cats, about the lore in this version of the world is these cats evolve into these cats based on magic. So there's these like purple and black cats, and based on the magic you cast around them, they evolve and shift into other creepier, more powerful forms based on that. So that was really cool. They got to kind of talk about that. There's 2 people that had been into the forest and came back, and they got to choose, and I think this is important because, like, yeah, you want your players to role play, but you want they want to give them choices that matter. So how I did this is I said there's 2 NPCs that have been to the forest and came back and know some shit about some stuff about the forest and whatnot, right? And the creatures inside. So you all, the 4 of you, get to choose who you're going to go talk to, right? Unless you want to spend multiple days here. And again, have time be over them. Have time be something that matters. So I was like, you could spend, so for one day, y'all can go talk to these people, right? If you want to spend 2 days, you can talk to both people and spend some more time doing this. But, it's kind of like up to you guys and how much time you want to spend. Now, if they really made a case of it and they wanted to spend all day and they want to go talk to everybody, and they really were like super aggressively asked for it, okay, sure, we could do something like that and spend the whole day and have more conversations with these people. But I want to give choice to them to be able to have like, okay, I want to do I choose this person who's been like a fighter that went to the forest, fought some things, and has came back and survived, or this like survivor Bear Grylls type person who like gets into the forest and like knows their way around, but they don't fight, they just know a lot about and they ran away from everything to be able to survive, right? So very different type of perspectives to get this information from. 2 players chose this one, 2 players chose that one. And then once I said, I gave the outline of the creatures, and I didn't say anything of the mechanics as far as how they work, how they function, their weaknesses, their layers, where they move and travel, what they kind of like, or like what they hunt, etc. I gave them choices once again of, okay, there are 4 different types of these creatures. Which one do you want to know information about? You can choose one, and if both of you choose the same one, you'll learn everything about it. But if you split it up, you could each split up to a different monster and learn a little bit about all of them, or dive into one, but then you're missing one. So I gave them some choice there to dive into what kind of creatures they want to learn about. So and it also limits the lore dump of just saying everything about everything and then they didn't earn it, right? So if they want to learn more, they can talk again still. So they double down on the magic cats, which I explained the whole evolution thing, not into what they evolve into, but just the fact that they do. They also chose about the peritons, which are these little flying deer situations. They learned a little bit about that one, and then a little bit about the Vrox, and then how they're like these like bird flying type monsters, right? So had a little bit of information, and then they felt good, so they went towards the forest. They go into the forest, and they get to the tree line. This was a very important moment. I was like, okay, y'all are at the tree line. It's a very obvious tree line from all the wood choppers that in Greenhaven go out to the forest and chop down the trees. Then we get a very solid line of the trees, so it's a clear line of where the forest is, right? And I was like, so I'm not gonna say anything else. This is all very specific. I don't want to say that you guys do something and then something happens. You're like, oh no, we didn't say we went into the forest though. So you guys be very clear of what y'all are saying. And that also just helps as the dungeon master to say like draw those lines so that they know where everything's at. So they are like, okay, so like, what do you want to do? Blah, blah, blah. And they start talking about, all right, let's go. Cause Randapan has his journal inside there. There's some sort of clearing. There's a little bit of mystery going on there. And it was just inside the forest. So close enough to just dip your toe in. So here we go. We go into the forest. They say they go into the forest. I was like, all right, may everybody make a D8 encounter check. So I roll the D8 behind the screen. They roll the D8 and to see if anyone matches me, right? Ooh. And then everything was fine. So they continued on into the forest. I described kind of what's going on. And I started to describe what they all start feeling. Some of these similar like worries that they have. Oh, Claude, Clara's cat, jumps off of her shoulder and sprints into the forest. I left that part out. That was one of the things they're like, all right, let's go to the forest. As soon as they said, yes, we are going to the forest, then I had Claude jump off the shoulder and run. Because I don't want to do that and force their hand like, oh, you're next to the forest? Claude jumps off her shoulder and run. Claude is the artificer's pet cat, who's more than just a pet cat. If you've watched the previous, the setup video to this whole thing. So he darts off into the forest for obvious reasons. This is like his homeland. He's from here. He's like, darts off there. They have no idea about this. As far as Claude, his background, they have no idea what he actually is. So Claude takes off. Everybody starts chasing after him. I was like, all right, so everybody made an encounter check. No one matched me, so we're fine. We move on further in, and then I gave them a little round to try and catch Claude. They kind of helped each other, like, I'm going to assist you. And then Q caught Claude, got him back. Okay, cool. And I was like, all right, now you guys have a moment. You're in the forest. You see exactly what Randapan said, and it's just one step farther. And one of the players was like, oh, no, come on. Oh, and that's what I'm looking for. I thought about, as a dungeon master, do I have them go one step into the forest, get the journal, and come out? And that was my original plan, but as we were playing, I was like, no, that's too easy. Like, this forest is terrible. This forest is bad. And they got to go one step further. So now they're in this really interesting choice. Do we turn back and leave, or do we go forward and get the journal? And I told them, I was like, it is one notch further. You will, where he said the journal is, it will be there. And then they were like, we're already in, let's go. So they went for it. And I was like, all right, we're going to make a D6 encounter check. My D6 encounter system. I should have a video by the time you see this on the channel about how the system works. But I rolled a D6 in front of everybody in the Tower of Doom, right? And it rolled a hit of 5. All right, cool. I was like, everybody go for it. And they're trying not to roll a 5 now. And then the Artificer rolls a 5, hits it. And I was like, okay, here we go. And so then I rolled on the Apex Creature sheet, and I got Nightmares. So there's a D6 sheet I have on the back of my Dungeon Master screen. 1 was the Vrock and like some other bads, the flying creatures, and all the way through. 5 was the Nightmares come to life, right? The forest and the nightmares come to life to really paint a picture of how bad it was. Now, one thing I realized in this moment, I did not have a combat for this. This was not like, this is the only thing on the list that did not have a combat for it. I was like, oh wow, okay, interesting. So on the fly, I had to come up with a skill challenge on the fly. So this was the nightmares came to life. That's all the thing said on my little sheet. Nightmares come to life. So I dived into each of their nightmares as far as what happens. Ivar sees a small girl sprint across the forest opening, in this little opening that they have. They found the backpack of Miranda Pan in the journal. They have it on them. And as this happens, this little girl goes, help! And she runs through the forest, my family! And she starts running into the forest. As the forest catches on fire, the entire forest just spontaneously combusts in the flames as the trees start to move and uplift, lift and move. The vines start to rip up, the trees start to kind of move, and their branches start to move, and they almost starts to come into the ground, the branches kind of wrap together, vines wrap together, forming limbs, and it's coming to life. They're like, what's going on? Q's fear is water, so the floor of the forest started to swell up with water, which is weird because everything else is on fire, right? So, and they're like, so wait, I see the fire, and then for the first time, all these little visions and nightmares that they'd had just in their own heads that I've established multiple times so far, everyone sees everyone's nightmares all real and all come to life. The entire forest is on fire. Everyone sees that girl running across. This is a skill challenge. What do you guys do right now? And then I painted the picture because you got to give them a goal for the skill challenge and what's obstacles they can interact with, right? So the goal was get the heck out of the forest. The curveball was this girl running further into the forest saying my family, which I knew would trigger Ivar to kind of wait. And then the fiery live forest is now, and I said, everybody make a dexterity saving throw because I want to throw one more little curveball at them to try and throw some adversity so they can overcome. Because if you throw a skill challenge at them and you don't have things for them to overcome, it's like, what do I do? I'm just gonna go this way, what? They dexterity saving throw, everyone fails except for Ivar, and I was like, all right, here we go, starting the skill challenge. Who's going up first? And I have a whole video on skill challenges, but basically each person gets to make a check. You have to go around, everybody has to say one check before we can go into round 2. The DC was 14. I told them that. I said the DC is 14. You need a certain amount of successes before 3 failures. I usually don't start off telling them how many successes they need, right? In my head already the number was 5. Because there's 4 of them. I usually like to go one more just in general. So then here we go. And we start off to quickly go through the skill challenge and not do a roll by roll. We had who went up first? Oh my gosh, I don't even remember who went up first. But basically, the first round was 2-2 after everything was said and done. Ivar grabs the girl and it's like, what's wrong? And she's like, incoherently yelling about her family in the forest. He looks off into the forest, doesn't see anything. It's just flames, right? And then Q, one of the successes, Q just starts ripping up the vines on everybody, rips up the vines on everybody to try and get the heck out of there. Cleans everybody off the vines. They're free to start running. Darius goes to pull all the different vines and kind of pull a pathway to stop the rest of the trees. He goes out. He fails. So my description of this, which I've done a little bit of descriptions before, he can't even move. His forest magic, his being able to move nature and stuff, doesn't even work in this forest. The forest doesn't even respond to him. As he fails, that was one of the failures. And then Clara tries to go over and help grab the girl and trying to pull her off and go to get everything going. And then she failed her roll, so I think that was the 2-2 right there. And then now they're all kind of scrambling. Ivar wants to go further into the forest to save whatever's happening with this girl, but then realize he can't. Clara's trying to help out with the girl, so they're all still kind of in the clearing. Q's breaking everybody up. The barbarian is freeing everybody, and then the wizard can't even manipulate. It's a wizard with a druid spell list. Can't even manipulate the forest. So after one round, they're still in the clearing. This is all cinematic and all as far as where they're going, but it was very accurate of where they're at. So it's 2 successes and 2 failures, 1 more failure, and it's done. And that you could feel it at the table. Everybody was like, oh my God, we are in over our heads. And I stopped in this moment just to kind of further amp up the pressure of like, you guys were told multiple times, do not go into the forest. You now understand the weight of why everyone was telling you not to do that. This forest is alive and attacking you with your worst nightmares. What do you guys do? This is the final round. One more failure, something very bad happens. And then they were kind of like, I said, one of you might get caught and left and stuck in this forest. And they're like, okay. So we go into the next thing. I had one moment here where Claude, I made a roll for Claude. I took a D20, I rolled it in front of everybody. It was a 4. I was like, this is, something's happening here. I'm not going to explain it because I want to see how it goes. I rolled the dice because if I rolling behind the scenes, if I rolled that D20 behind the screen, they would have felt like I was maybe trying to help, like, oh, I'm just gonna help you guys out. Yeah. Oh, they succeeded. Yeah. Okay. Oh, it looks better. I saved you guys. Whew. You know, I wanted to keep it real. Like the dice were telling a story. I am straight up. So I rolled a D20 out in front. I said, this is going towards y'all's roll. For a failure here will not count as a failure, but a success could, right? This can only help you. So I rolled it in the dice tower. It rolled a 4. Nope, not gonna happen. So I was like, Claude is trying to get out. Claude's trying to do something, and he's like, he's trying to get out from Q. And I had him do a little contest, and Claude escapes from Q, and they're like, what does Claude look like he's doing? I was like, he's like slapping and clawing at the water on the bottom. You don't know what's going on. Now, really, I had a whole thing I could do with Claude if he had to succeed on that roll, and if he did succeed on that roll, I was going to describe Claude bending water and like having some actual manipulation with water and putting out some of the fires around the situation, and that would have been a success for him. And Claude would have cast the magic in front of them for the first time. Would have been crazy, but dice didn't want that to happen yet. So he's like doing weird stuff with the water. But anyway, they go into the next thing, and I remind them, I'm like, guys, if you want, you can aid each other and help each other to try and lower the DC for the next person, right? I have a whole thing in the skill challenge for that. So they start to really kind of think, be very careful, because in the next roll that fails, something bad happens. So Ivar starts, they all take off. The fighter's like looking around to try and do some perception and see if there's a spot in the clearing where the fire, because the force is like shifting and moving around them. They all start to book it. Clara had some, she started trying to throw sort of buzzsaw to cut down some of the vines that were kind of blocking the way so they could run up on the thing. They're using the water to kind of like kick up onto the fires to put out the flames a little bit so they can still run on the ground, trying to get out of this forest. We had another success from all that happening, and we went around one more time around the table. They were using some help to help each other, and we got down to one final roll. One final roll. It was literally 4 successes and 2 failures. And I told them, I was like, you need 5 successes. So it is literally down to this roll. And it was just down to Darius, right? The wizard. And he's like, well, I don't really know what to do. And this is an interesting moment here, because him as the player, he felt like handicapped or paralyzed or couldn't do the things he wanted to do because he's like, my magic doesn't work here. Darius is, and this is good role play on his part. Darius is convinced that none of his magic works in the forest. So I'm just a normal guy. What can I do? And as the player, he's like, what can I do? And he almost took a back step out of the thing, almost like put himself on the bench and just like, I can't do anything. And I was like, what would Darius do though? Like, what would you do? Well, I know you don't think you can work with your magic, but what are you going to try and do? He's like, well, where am I? Can I run? I was like, this is a cinematic combat. You can kind of describe wherever you're going to be. And like, you can say you're running. He's like, am I still in the forest? Am I in the front of the pack, back of the pack? And a lot of times players get to think of, cause you all got to try and get in the same page in our own heads here. But I was like, you can be wherever you want to describe it. You were the first person. If you want to say that you're ahead of the pack, like we're down to one roll here. He's like, well, can I be in the clearing and like get out of the forest and turn around? I was like, yeah, what are you doing? Right. He's like, I get out of the forest, and she's racking my brain the whole time while I'm thinking about what can I do? And my magic's not working. I got to get out of the forest, turn around to get out of the forest. Can't even manipulate the forest. And it comes down to, he goes, I want to take my familiar. And in my world, familiars mean something. I have a whole familiar system that's going to be coming out in Alexander's Almanac. But familiars mean something. They're connected to you. They share health with you. You can't just resummon them and they're just, they're back. Hey, like this is a sacrifice. He looks at his pet familiar, which is this vine snake. He looks in the eyes. He goes, I'm sorry, Winston. And he grabs the familiar's vine snake and throws it into the forest. And he's like, I want to throw the vine snake into the forest, turn it into a vine, catch the end of the tail as it extends out to try and pull them out as the forest is like collapsing in flames behind them. I was like, oh my God, I just got chills again. I don't know if you can see that. I just got chills again here. Like it was so smart that he goes, and he said this too. He goes, because Winston, this vine snake, is not part of the forest. He is something he made from a clean part of the forest, not this dark, twisted part of the forest. So I was like, that makes absolute sense. Make a spell check at advantage. I gave him advantage on this roll. And this is not me giving advantage because I'm like, oh, make sure that, like, that's sick. That's amazing. So threw it out there. He hits a 20, not a nat 20, but he hits a 20. And they get that final success. It's to describe the vine snake pulling them out and getting out of the forest. And they get out, everything's clear, they're good, and they're like kind of gathering themselves up, and they're like, okay. And then they're like, who's this girl? And they look over, and I was like, you look over to the girl, Clara, you're holding the girl's hand because like as you ran her through the thing, in your hand is a branch hand. It's this small, tiny, about the size of a human hand, but it's like little fingers and like a twigs and branches in the form of a branch holding on, cut off at the wrist as you hold this in your hand, and there is no girl. You turn around to the forest is not on fire. The trees that fell as Darius pulled you just through them are completely fine. You look back and the forest is untouched, unmoving, just as before you entered it. And they're like, okay, we got to get further away, get out. So that was really interesting. And then let's go back to here now. So there's they went to the forest, enter the forest. There we go. That was the encounter check. They went through the jungle clearing, and they one more notch further. They could have found a campsite of lichens. One more notch further, they would have found something else, but they didn't go that far. They wanted to get out of there. And then, I forgot this. There was a Kenku as they said that, yeah, we're going to go to the forest. A Kenku ran out of the forest, repeating something about a purge, and it's ready. It's a purge, and they just let him go. So there's a little bit of stuff they could have learned there from that Kenku, but now that Kenku, he's gone, and those interesting things that like you think your players are going to engage with certain NPCs, but then they don't. So there goes the Kenku. And then okay, so now they kind of like, what do we do now? And so they wanted to go to the dam. Let me show the thing here. This little dam situation. They are going to the forest. They're right here, right? And then they wanted to go to this dam that's blocking the water. So there's this water blockage that's like stopping the water from going to the Greenhaven and stopping the water from going to the Tech Nation, which is up here, right? So they're like, okay, let's go check out this whole thing. Apparently the wanderers, those damn wanderers, are blocking off the water. So they go to check out this thing. They sneak up on it. They see a very shoddily built dam. They see a camp outside of Wanderers. They come up there, and this is a big thing. Like the Wanderers is a very tactical thing. Would be a big fight potentially. This was towards the end of the session, so I was like, we might just end the session here and pick up a combat against the Wanderers. Like, what's going on? So they're sneaking up along the thing. We had some, however that whole thing gets ran off. This like, what are y'all doing? Be very specific. I'm sneaking. Are you now stealthing? You're getting close now. Like you're now entering into the spot where you could be seen. Who's going there? How far are we going? Just to make sure everybody's on the same page. Kind of like with the forest. And they see some people, and then we had a group one round stealth check situation, and it was not good. No one rolled higher than, I think the highest roll was a 14, and then we had like a 10, 11, and a 4, so it was not good. They got spotted, and then the Wanderers start to rush out and around them, and they had an interesting moment here. I was like, what do you guys do? They are about a football field away from you, 100 yards away from you. What do you guys do in this moment? They kind of talked, and I was like, and I had a little, like 30-second little timer go. I don't even know if they saw me grab the timer and put it down. But they had about 30 seconds before I was going to say something. And then they were like talking to me, we're going to stand here. We're going to talk. We're going to fight with them. We're going to see what's going on. And then they asked, like, what do they look like? They have crossbows, but they're not pointing them at you. They're loaded, and they're like saying like, hey, what's your like this? They're starting to kind of move out there. And they decided to non-hostily try and talk with them. And I was like, oh, wow. Because in this world, Wanderers are not bad. They are not evil as they've got the bad rap to be. So they very riskingly open themselves up to the Wanderers, which easily could have been a kidnap them all and put them into the thing, and that's a whole thing if that was what the Wanderers were. But that's not what the Wanderers were. They're a misunderstood band of savages who aren't really that savage, right? So they made an interesting choice to allow themselves to have this happen and open themselves up to this whole thing. So they start talking with them, and they are very smart with what they're saying. They're talking about some other things. They bring up the Tech Nation, who's the nicest of the nations towards the Wanderers. they bring up some concerns, and they're like, yeah, we're stopping the dam so that the city doesn't have this this funky infested water that's all toxic and stuff. And like they had this whole conversation with them, super interesting. And they're opening themselves up and like sharing some information, and then they're like, hey, so like, and they go back and forth a little bit, and it comes down to the roll. It's like, all right, I need Darius, the wizard, give me a persuasion check. Give me a persuasion check of just kind of like how they are feeling you guys out right now, how much they trust you guys, how much all the stuff's going on. Because we're at this really point here where do they shove them away? Do they like we're at a crossroads. I need the dice to tell me what's going on here, right? Like, let's see what happens. Nat 20. I was like, oh wow. He's like, yeah, like, come on in. And he like stands down and he makes this hand signal, and all these wanderers come out from around the forest that were surrounding them, and they're like, oh, okay, wow, all right, that would have been yeah. So they come on in and they start having a conversation about like the wanderers. They're like, the water's not infesting this, it comes from this, and it comes from the flood. And they show them, and let me show you guys for the first time here. They start talking about the map, right? And their map, and they start talking about some stuff about the map and where the flood comes from. They're like, yeah, the flood comes from the crater. And he holds up a map, and as soon as I show them, he holds up a map. It's like not the same as this map, and they're like, wait, what? This is the wrong map? And he's like, no, look. And he showed them, this is the map, and this is the true. Oops, whoa! I just accidentally. Okay, there we go. This is the incarnate map. This is the map of the true map of the world. Now, there's some still things labeled on my Dungeon Master version that are not labeled here, but this is the map of Corin, and they don't even have like this whole situation right here is off of their map. And they're like, wait, what? And they're like, the Muck Crater is the source of the flood. This is what happened in this. And like, oh my gosh, okay, so this is way above our pay grade right now. Like, we are in over our heads. Wow. Because if you think about it, right? If you think about it, let me shift the tool here. They were in the Tech Nation, and then they chose. I gave them quests to go up or quests to go down. They chose quests to go down. They go down here. They get on through, and then they're now in the little Green Haven situation down here. And they're like, you know what? We're gonna go to the dam, and they go down further to where they're further down to the forest, to where the dam is, and the Wanderers kind of stopping the water with the forest, and then they open themselves up to the Wanderers. You see all these different things that would have to happen, and then they get a nat 20 to go along with the Wanderers, who start to explain some stuff to them that they're not really that bad of a thing, and they're trying to stop some of the things that are going on. Their leaders know a whole lot, and they start to drop some nuggets on them about what's going on. They went into the forest, they came back, they know some information, this is happening. He's like, you know what, hold up. And then they see Q's arm, this like tech arm. They're like, wait a second, we need to call our boss right now. So then they kind of leave, and they come back, and they said, tomorrow morning we can have him here, and because the Wanderers kind of shift and move around the whole land, he can come here. This is Hemlock. Hemlock is actually the father of Odin, one of the original 4 players that had to leave for real life reasons. And then we had Ivar come step in and bring us back to 4 players. But that one player that was left, this is his actual father. So that's an interesting little curveball that would have been a father reunion. Which I never would have thought would happen in session 5. So they come in, and they wait for the day. They stay at camp there. I think it was a 19 persuasion, another 18 or something. Like, this was going very, very well as far as their relationship with the Wanderers. They were very open about everything of what they knew. Like, I did not see it going this way. So Hemlock gets there, and this is the big moment. Hemlock gets there, and he starts talking to everybody, and he sees Q's arm. Q is a Warforged. He is 100% robot, but he only shows his left arm. Everything else is an illusion of his face, and he wears armor on everywhere else, right? Hemlock, this leader of one of the 5 leaders of the Wanderers, he's the second in command, or second from the bottom, right? So there's 3 above him, right? So he's rank 4 of all the 5 Wanderers. He sees his arm, and you see whenever Hemlock comes in, Hemlock has a tech arm. His right arm is a tech arm, and it's like much larger. Hemlock's a halfling, and he has this like larger human-sized right arm. So the right arm's like massive on his body, and it's real strange looking. He kind of has to tilt his body when he's walking around, and they kind of are like shocked by that or whatever. And as soon as he sees Q in his arm, he's like, "Come with me." And like literally, I was like, "Do you go with him?" And they said, "Yeah." He like went along with it, and I took the player from the table, and we came into this room, and I was like, "All right, we're gonna have a little one-on-one right now." he is going to start asking you about your arm and all that kind of stuff. And then we had a little back and forth, some role play, some just talking back and forth as far as what's going on. And I was like, how much do you trust him? How much do you tell him? Do you tell him about you? And so he said, like, I was born with this arm. I had it since I was born. So he lied, but a little white lie. And he lied earlier on. And then Hemlock like released the arm, the tech arm, and dropped it. And it was almost like a sleeve of like a gauntlet arm that hits the ground as he shows two normal human hands. It was almost like a sleeve that he kind of like activated this like gauntlet type arm. And he's like, oh, because like Q thought he could work it. So I asked Q, I was like, do you move that all on your own? Is that all biologically you? And he's like, yeah, I can move it. He's like, I knew it, you liar. And he threw it down. He's like, this was not possible. And Q's like, somebody made it for me. He's like, that's not possible. Because Hemlock knows that this is a Warforged like tech, and that is a Warforged arm. So he knows that Q's still lying, but Q was open and telling some stuff. So Q had an interesting moment where if Q completely was honest, then this guy would have been completely honest, and that would have been a huge benefit to them. But people like to keep information, understandably so. You can't just trust everybody, but this is one of those moments where they should have trusted this person. This is a good person. It's hard to tell because of all the other stuff that's going on, right? But he got a little bit more information about what's going on, and they're like, oh, he said, okay, all right, I'll keep your secret or whatever. Your friends apparently, I don't know if they know or whatever, but let's go back. So we went back and everything. And they all start talking about like what's going on and like what the state of the wanderers are like, what's going on with the forest and the toxic sludge that's happening. And then this is the big curveball that I ended the session with. I said, I need everybody real quick just to make a wisdom saving throw. And they're like, okay, that's always just unsettling when the Dungeon Master does that. Or no, an intelligence saving throw. And then I was like, okay, here's how this goes. You guys are all talking in this tent, this open tent with Hemlock, and you see this like, and these screams like, hey, what is that? And as you look to the horizon towards the forest, and you see this dome of purple energy like ripping through the ground. It's like moving. There's like wind that's coming off of it. People start to scream, turn and run. You guys all stand up, start to scream and turn and run. Not that they said that they screamed. I didn't say that they screamed. You guys all stand up and start to run back. Like wait. It's too fast. It sweeps over all of you, knocking you back onto the ground. So in that room, there was the 4 players, Hemlock, and then 2 normal people, 2 normal regular wanderers, right? They all get knocked to the ground. They all passed their saves. They all rolled 19, 16, 17. Had the DC be just 15 for this one. But it was a memory pulse from the forest, one of the forest that's happened before. Again, if you've seen the main thing, the main video of all this lore, the forest, this was a Forest Nation Nightmare Rift pulse across the entire world of Corrin. It rippled through the entire land and wiped the memory clean of there ever being a Forest Nation, right? Which has happened before to the other nations, and that's why people don't ever remember these other nations. So now, anyone who failed the save, which is everyone, and the only reason why these 4 players had a chance to make the save is they have something in their backgrounds that helped them to be able to remember. Same with Hemlock. Hemlock has this tech arm situation and some other things. He was able to make the save as well. I made the save for him. So the other 2 automatically failed. Like the other 2 normal people, the normal wanderers, they automatically failed. So now they're like, what just happened? So as soon as it passed, I described like they're like everyone kind of is like shocked and look around. But you notice the other 2, JJ and Clint, the 2 normal wanderers. You look at them and they seem totally fine. They kind of like brush themselves off and they just go back and sit down where they were. And they kind of snap back into it, and they're like, "Hey, why y'all? Hey, come back, sit down." Acting like nothing's happening, like nothing's wrong. And you look around the rest of the camp, everybody kind of is standing up, kind of brushing themselves off, shaking their head, and goes back to what they're doing. Everyone seems completely fine except the 4 of you players and Hemlock, and you all kind of look at each other, knowing that y'all just saw some stuff. And what just happened, right? So from some talking around with, they're like, wait, JJ, the other wanderer person, did you just see, what are you talking about? And he like asks them, he's like, okay, why are y'all even here? Because it doesn't make sense. Like the story that y'all said, like you said you went into the forest, but like no one goes into the forest. You don't go there. No one's lived there. No one's ever lived there. It's been like this. And they're like, wait, what do you mean no one's ever lived there? He's like, yeah. And he's like, there was a forest nation. I know it's weird now, but there was. And he's like, "What are you talking about, forest nation? There's never been a forest nation. There's only 4 nations, y'all. There's never been a forest nation. What are you talking about? You can't have a nation inside the forest. It's freaking crazy in there. No one goes in there." And they're all like looking around at each other. I was like, and that's where we're gonna end the session with. Apparently that this big pulse of energy has wiped clean there ever being a forest nation from everyone around you. And now there is where the session ended. They're all like, wait, so there's no more. So we got to go. I don't even know what they're going to do. So this is now off the rails in a really cool direction. I did not think 5 sessions in they would have met up with the Wanderers and learned as much as they did from bonding with one of the leaders of the Wanderers. That was not at all what I ever think would have happened, but this is D&D, and that's the great part of it. So stay tuned for next time, episode 6. Stay creative, think outside the box, because these players, they're outside the box for sure.